You can do longer, and Steve Sacker was on for 3 hours, but you don't have to do 3 hours.
It's a little rough for me.
And here we go. Welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the Light 'em Up Lounge, our weekly cigar live show. It is a pleasure and honor to welcome Eric and Jordan, the father and son dream team from Cigar Dojo, with us today. As always, for all of you joining us here at the lounge, please make yourselves heard if you have any questions. For those of you joining us over on Facebook, please put your questions underneath the live stream. I'm always checking so we can forward your questions to Eric and Jordan. But without further ado, let's get things started. And first of all, again, a very warm and heartfelt welcome, Eric and Jordan, to both of you. Thanks for joining us here at the Light 'em Up Lounge.
Thank you guys for having us. It's a kind of an early morning, not early, but it's
early for me.
It's lunchtime here in Colorado. The snow is just about to start falling, where a blizzard is moving in. So we're excited to be in Dojo Studios smoking the cigar with you guys.
That sounds just about right, and the perfect time to enjoy a wonderful handmade premium cigar, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What are you lighting up today for this special occasion?
I'm going with the Aladino Cameroon from Jerry.
Beautiful.
I am doing the Sobremesa Brulee. This is the double Corona size, which is my favorite. The thing lasts forever. You can just sit there and zone out, smoke it for a couple hours, and don't have to worry about a thing.
Brilliant. So I just lit up the new Vegafina Nicaragua. It's the Grand Volcano, which is a 5 3/8, I believe, by 56, which is just above my usual comfort zone, featuring all Nicaraguan tobaccos with the wrapper and binder from Yalapa and Esteli and Yalapa in the filler. Very interesting. I'm intrigued.
Now, it almost looks like you're wearing a smoking jacket. Is that a smoking jacket?
Of course it is.
Damn, that looks amazing. I gotta up my game.
I've been trying to get the whole dojo studio to have
yeah.
dedicated smoking jackets. So we just hang on the wall. You come in, you just put on your smoking jacket.
So like Mr. Rogers, you just pull it off the wall, you change it out,
and then slippers too.
Because you look way better than we do. I mean, I gotta up my game. I'm telling you.
Not at all. I mean, everybody has his own style, right? And for special occasions, I've got to probably wear the colors. So properly dressed for the occasion, having you gentlemen. Well, let's get it started, and let's start right at the beginning, probably, because Cigar Dojo is nearing its 10-year anniversary, right? Even though when you guys started, it was a slightly different platform. I believe it was the quick cigar reviews that sort of kickstarted it, everything. And if I'm not mistaken, Eric, is it correct that Jordan brought you back to cigars and he actually started you off again with handmade premium smokes?
Yeah, that's true. So way back in the day when I was a youngster, I did smoke some cigarettes and whatnot. And as I got older, quit completely, and it was very difficult. So that was it. I wasn't smoking anymore. I was done. And then Jordan, you can pick up the rest of the story.
Well, it was like we were in Vegas and walked by the Casa Fuente shop, and somehow somebody said, "Let's go check it out." And me and my brother were just like, wow, this is crazy that he's even going into a cigar store. And then like all of a sudden it was like, let's get some. And we're like, this is not happening. And we had a cigar at Casa Fuente, and then we came back and was like, yeah, what happens in Vegas? And then a couple weeks later, my dad was like, you guys want to smoke another cigar? It was from there, it was just, guns blazing.
See, I'm one of those guys that like once I get into something, I don't go halfway, like I go crazy. And so, I didn't, being a young adult, I'd smoked cigars and all that, but I'd never really been exposed to like a real, premium cigar. And so when we came back to Denver, we went to a cigar lounge, and I had a Padron 1964 Maduro. It was the imperial size, I remember. And when I smoked that cigar, I was like, okay, I get this now. Like this is something unique and different. It's all about flavor and experience and relaxation and socializing. Like all of a sudden my mind was opened up to, this isn't just like going out on your break and getting some nicotine in your system, right? So like once I understood that, then it changed my life. And then a couple years later, we started, or probably a year later, we started quickcigarreviews.com, and it kind of caught on. Like it was sort of getting some traction, and but we didn't like. We kind of just did that for fun, and we didn't realize it was going to catch traction like that. And so when it did start to catch on, Jordan and myself, we were like, yeah, this is fun, but it's not a very marketable name. It isn't something that we're super jazzed about. So Jordan came up with Cigar Dojo. And the idea was, in a dojo, people come there and they learn from each other. Like we never thought of it so much as we were teaching other people, because we were kind of newbies ourselves. We thought of it more as like, we want to all learn from each other together. And that sounds like a dojo, right? Like you go there and you learn. And
we didn't even have the app at that point. We just wanted even our blog to have a community type of feel.
Right. We wanted the blog to be like community oriented. And so then that caught on really well. I got a couple people took notice, and started getting some advertising and that kind of thing. And I was dealing with, Jordan had a full-time job. I had a bunch of different clients. And so it was still a side project at that point. But when we made the app about 6 months later, which was in the App Store, all the app stores and all that, and we'll talk more about that later, I assume. But back in the day, we could have an app in the App Store. And when we did that, it just exploded and kind of took off from there.
I really like the fact that you mentioned once you dedicate your time to something, you go all in and you make it properly. And that's also, I believe, one of the differentiating elements for you guys compared to a lot of other cigar media, that early on you said, we're going to do this full time. This is going to be our thing. And we want to dedicate our work, our time, our efforts to premium cigars and the enjoyment of it and helping other people along the way. How quickly did that sort of that realization kick in, or was it more like a strategic plan, or did you feel like at some point you just had to do it?
It was never part of the plan early on to have it as like an actual business, supporting our lifestyle and our everything that we do, our job. But it just sort of became that way. And then I think a couple years down the line, Jordan.
Well, I'd say like once the app started taking off, it was like in the back of your head, you're like, oh, this could turn into something.
This could be something. And then eventually Jordan quit his job to work full time on mainly the website, because the website was kind of rudimentary. I mean, it looked really nice, but the reviews and stuff were not that great. I was writing a lot of them, and that's really not my main forte. The photography was terrible. So when Jordan got full time into the dojo, the photography became much better, the reviews became much better, and nowadays, I kind of feel like they're some of the best in the industry, the reviews that we do of cigars. So it really took, efforting full time, 60 hours a week doing this. And so now that's all we do. And not only that, but we have, 5 or 6 guys that are also sort of part of the staff, not full time, but it takes a lot. I don't think people realize, when you're covering the shows, PCA, TPE, when you're reviewing cigars, when you have 2 different live shows a week, and when you have the app, the new app, it's just so incredibly time consuming to like keep all those balls in the air.
I hear you. And what's wonderful about it, though, is you can work alongside each other as father and son, which I assume on the one hand is beautiful and a privilege, where on the other hand, it's probably a challenge in certain ways as well. How do you guys get along with each other when working next to it? Is it mostly positive? Some negative elements as well? And I know, Jordan, you're a perfectionist, right? And then Eric probably has to sort of bring it all back together and make it feasible.
It works great. I mean, other than my dad kicking me under the desk, we had to separate our desks now. There's little things that get on your nerves. Doesn't like listen to his music in headphones like a normal person. He just plays whatever he's listening to, just full blast in the studio. Other than that, it works great.
Now, actually, what's interesting is we are a pretty good team in that Jordan is a perfectionist and wants to do everything perfectly, which is great. I, on the other hand, am kind of like a big picture, like let's boom, let's get this done. So together, that makes for a pretty good team because, otherwise Jordan would spend 3 weeks on a single article. And I would spend 3 minutes on an article. So together it kind of balances out.
And then how does it feel like once you're off stage and once the camera is off?
Oh, we get along great. I mean, Jordan's my best friend. We do everything together. We go he has 3 kids, my grandkids. And so we spend a lot of time together. It's a dream. It's a dream job to be able to work with your son and your family like this. Are you kidding me? I don't even feel like I'm working.
Is it difficult sometimes to switch from business mode into like a father and son conversation then?
I don't think really it's that difficult, since what we're doing is smoking cigars. Like if our business was something more serious, maybe that would be the case, but it's kind of just because smoking cigars with your dad is such an enjoyable thing to do anyways. It kind of just seamlessly blends together.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like we're just always we're either always not working or we always are working. I can't really tell what the difference, but we're just always in the same, usually like when Jordan comes over with his family, we're going to eat dinner or whatever. We're still talking about, the same stuff, like, hey, Jordan, what did you think of that cigar? Are we going to review that one? Like we're kind of always in that mode. And then even here when we're working, like the grandkids will come in and we'll talk and da. So like, it's always just seems like we're in the same mode, 24/7. And it's great. I love it. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather do.
What's interesting is most people would say, if you find what you love, you never work another day in your life. And then there's other people who might argue that once you start working on the things you truly enjoy, and once you have the privilege, for example, to work with premium cigars, it has a slight danger of probably taking away some of that passion and sucking you into the more sort of kind of business side of it. Did you ever feel that way?
Yeah, I definitely think there's some of that, because I do remember early on, Jordan, like when we go to Delaney's, which was a really cool Irish bar downtown where we'd go smoke occasionally. there was that like feeling of like, this is like this, we're going to go out and we're going to smoke cigars. It's this sort of special time. And now, we don't really have those types of things that often. It's sort of, even though, don't get me wrong, every time I go to smoke a cigar, I love it. There's not that wonderment, So yeah, there is a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think you just have to just make a conscious effort to say like, okay, now I'm smoking for, we're all hanging out and we're smoking and we need to get back in that mode. And then there's at your desk smoking where you're just kind of just doing it, but you have to make a mental note to actually tell yourself to think about the cigar in a different mind frame.
And then there's the other aspect, which is like when we're, at a trade show, and it just seems like it's all business at that point. And you're trying to find time to, am I even enjoying these cigars? Like, like that's why nowadays we've changed. We don't stay in the hotels anymore or anything. We get a house, because that way we can kind of get out of the whole trade show buzz, and then relax, pour a bourbon, get some cigars out, and enjoy our time together with the other guys. Whereas when you're staying, like you're at TPE or PCA and you're at the hotel, the actual event hotel, there's just a buzz, and you're never really like enjoying and relaxing. And so, yeah, Jordan's right. Like you have to kind of mentally say like, I need to get out of this now, sit down and just enjoy the cigar,
I would say for me, probably the only thing where I have to sort of switch in my mind is when you sample a cigar and you taste it for review purposes, for example. It's slightly different than just lighting up a cigar for pleasure and leisure. But apart from that, I'm still fascinated by every single cigar that I get a chance to enjoy with somebody. Like what we're doing right now, it's a wonderful conversation shared over a wonderful cigar, and still it reminds me of what's amazing about these wonderful things of brown tobacco leaves being rolled into a vitola. It's about the community and the camaraderie, and sharing that with people who have the same passion and the same mindset, and sort of a common set of values and beliefs.
Yeah, what's interesting about that too is I don't get that with anything else. Now I love wine, right? I love wine.
And your bourbons.
And I love bourbon, and I love having a good cocktail. I do. I love sitting down to enjoy a movie, but there's something about a cigar that is different from all of those things. And sometimes I can't even put words. I'm not exactly sure why that is.
Seems like beer community might be
it's close.
Closest.
Yeah, it might be
nobody
close.
that. Yeah, cigars are unique in that sense.
Yeah, it's so community driven, and it's so social. I mean, we have the same guys come over to the studio every, Wednesday and Friday night for the shows. We have, a few guys that are in studio, and then obviously the people online. But it never gets old. When the show's over, we're excited, it went really well, and then you're just going to light up that cigar, and you're not working anymore, and you're not doing the show anymore. It's just it's fun every single time. I don't exactly know why that is, but I guess it's a testament to how awesome these are and what a great community the cigar community is,
It seems to attract a certain quality of people. And somehow I always find that those who enjoy a good cigar have certain values and beliefs that they share that make them all around good people to hang out with.
Yeah, what's really cool too about that is like, say Emmett from Blind Man's Puff, right? He's a good friend of ours, and they have a great blog where they blind review cigars. Well, Emmett's political views and my political views are on polar opposites of the scale, right? But it doesn't matter, because when you light up that cigar and you're hanging out, you don't care, and you can talk. Sometimes we get into political discussions, but when you have the cigar, there's just something about that like ties the two of you together, and it makes this bond where you're able to, it doesn't matter who that person is across the table from you. If they are enjoying their premium cigar, like you're enjoying your premium cigar, sort of all the other stuff just melts away. You know, all the other problems of life and differences that you might have, they just melt away, and you're able to just enjoy each other's company. It's amazing.
Very true. So normally you guys are on the other end of the interview side, and today I have the pleasure of sharing my questions with you. What would you say are some of the questions that you would love to see more during the cigar interviews, or what are the questions that you would love to be asked?
Oh, that's a toughie, man. Didn't think about that. You know, I guess I think I'll tell you the questions that I don't like to talk about too much anymore. I'll start there, and I'll see if Jordan thinks of anything while I'm talking. But it's sometimes I think, and you can't help it. I mean, we do talk a lot about trade. I'm occasionally guests on other shows, and then we have our shows, of course. And we do have to talk about the trade shows because they're important, right? They are important. It's part of our industry. It gives us an idea of where we're going and what's going on and what new cigars there are. But I do think that topic it's sometimes, your eyes glaze over a little bit. Like it is a little bit dry. Like I do like the topic more of the cigars themselves, and like, what do you like and what type of cigars do you like? Do you like the spicy cabinet spice habanos, or what is it about the chocolatey maduros? That it does seem like when we're interviewing guys, I'm always more interested to find out what cigars that they like besides their own brand.
That's like usually the most asked question.
Yeah, and that is a fascinating. It is fascinating to hear like Pete Johnson talk about another brand, or the other night Nick Perdomo talking about some of the other cigars that he smokes besides his own.
I only had, I think, one guest that I can think of that's just said no.
They'll go nameless.
Yeah, but you got to smoke other people's stuff.
Yeah.
Is there probably like a question that you think is just not being asked enough in the cigar world these days?
I think one thing that is sort of like, where are we headed in the cigar industry? Are we in a good place? Are we in a bad place? Sometimes it's hard to tell. Like, for instance, right now, where we are in the cigar industry, it's kind of hard to tell if we're in like a really good place. It's kind of seems like a really good place. Like the FDA is kind of backed off. But at the same time, that could change. There seems to be some sort of, boom going on. Was that COVID related? Will that go away as COVID panic starts to die down? So it's a little bit hard to tell the roadmap, like if we're in a really good place right now, or if we're just in a kind of a little eye of the storm. I have a hard time determining. Jordan, what do you think? Is the cigar industry in a good place?
Short term, yeah. Feels like it.
It does feel like it. What do you think? Are we in a good place right now? I mean, in your opinion?
I honestly think that it's tempting to think we are, solely by the sheer numbers, because cigars are booming, sales are up. The number of cigars imported into the US were spectacular yet again that we've seen recently. On the flip side, a lot of challenge comes with that when we think about the raw material, when we think about the just sheer number of people in the factories, not to talk about like all the political unrest and the challenges that we see in Honduras or Nicaragua, Cuba, obviously with tremendous issues when it comes to raw material. So I think there's always positives and negatives. Ultimately, I think we're in a good place, and it's wonderful to see that more people seem to enjoy great cigars, and those who already enjoyed cigars now probably get to smoke more. But the industry as a whole, in my humble opinion, needs to be very cautious and careful as to how we move forward. and what the future is going to hold. And then you mentioned the looming threat of FDA, and it seems like, at least for now, we've got a little bit of a break, but that's all going to come back at some point. Then we will have to face those discussions yet again. So
Yeah,
I would say it's an ambiguous feeling at the moment.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, because, you know, like in the 90s and the big cigar boom, the reason that it crashed so hard was, you know, the supply of good tobacco just couldn't meet the mass demand, right? And now we have this mass demand, and we not only do we have a mass demand of tobacco, but we have the supply chain issues. So we do have to be careful. That's a good point. Like, and we might not even notice the effects of this for like a year or two, or maybe even 3 or 4, right? Like, so many of these companies, like, you walk into Drew Estate's factory, they have enough tobacco to last them 5 years, right? They'd be fine. But will this supply issue affect us somewhere down the road? Yeah, we have to be a little bit careful, especially knowing that there's this so much of the tobacco is being consumed. Like right now, it feels like not only we are in a little cigar boom, but we're also kind of in like a good quality boom. Like the stuff that's coming out, like our year-end list this year, I feel like, Jordan, that was one of our more
I can't
solid
tell if
lists.
it's just that you always think that the most recent year is the best, but it does feel like this was a more solid one than the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, here's an interesting question for you. I've spoken to other cigar media professionals, and it seems that a few of them are worried about the quality of recent review cigars that they have sampled, and that there was a slight decline in the quality of the cigars that they did review. Have you noticed something similar with the reviews that you've done on Dojo?
I think that there's a little bit of both. Like this year might have been, now I didn't notice anything like across the board, any issues like that, but I would say that maybe there was more reviews that got lower scores, and then also I'm more proud of the top 10 list that we did at the same time. So there's a little bit of both, I would say.
So maybe the middle is the kind of the missing piece. Like there is more cigars for us that rated lower, but there are also some real gems that were better than anything. I think, you know, a couple of years ago, was it 2 years ago, that everybody was like, wow, this seems like a super down year. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but this year we were kind of worried about that ourselves. Like around June or July, we were thinking, man, this could be a bad year. But then by the time the year wrapped up and on all the products that finally came out, it was a really positive year, I thought. But yeah, maybe Jordan's right. Maybe it's the middle that's kind of missing. You know, you have some really good highs and you have a little bit more lows and less right in the middle.
Well, wouldn't you say that this is probably an evolution that we see in all parts of life now, whether it's the economy or society, that the gap is widening? And, you know, there's a lot of lower end stuff, budget. I have a hospitality and wine and spirits background, and there in particular, I see it a lot. Like there's plenty of low quality, low price, no service, because you cannot afford it anymore because you do not have the working force. And then there's the uber luxury segment, the top tier, where you can spend whatever money you want and there'll always be a clientele for that. But it's the middle class that is slowly eroding.
Well, I mean, it could be that, or is it just even everything along the way is slowly moves up? Like we saw this year, pretty much across the board, almost every cigar company raised their prices, right? Like to try to handle these issues that we're talking about. So you almost just have to, the market just figures it out, right? Over time, like you have these areas in time, these little segments in time where the market has to adjust. And I think right now in the cigar industry, for sure, we are adjusting. The market is adjusting. A few years ago, expensive cigar for most people, they would have said $8 or $9, right? Now you say 11 or 12. right? I mean, that's just the way it is. And so the market has to figure itself out, and all those things begin to adjust. And I think maybe in the last 4 or 5 years, we're in kind of like a little bit of an adjustment period.
We had an excellent question from Mitchell watching us over on Facebook. A question to the boys. He said, should companies be more transparent in all aspects, like the growing, fermentation, rolling, labeling, blending, whatever you have? And would it be a good or a bad thing if they were forced to be more transparent?
I, as a consumer, as like a cigar nerd, like that kind of stuff. I definitely don't think that companies should be forced to do that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, for the guys that wanted to get into the nuts and bolts, that makes it more interesting to be able to know that, oh, that's the actual varietal of this wrapper that I happen to enjoy, and now I can find another cigar that has that same varietal. Whereas the less information there is, you can't really do that. So I enjoy that, but I don't think that companies should be forced to do that kind of stuff.
No, like that would be horribly. I'd be completely opposed to forcing them to be a lot of this is marketing, right? Like the companies come up with a cool narrative, and it only works well for whatever product that is. Like some companies are really good at being really transparent. They'll just say, I take like a Steve Saka, right? He'll just say whatever. Like he'll tell you anything you want to know. You ask him, he'll just tell you flat out, whether that makes him look good or whether it makes him look bad. He doesn't care. He'll just tell you. Other companies like to be a little bit more, finessed and maybe, make their product seem, a little bit more than it is or whatever. Right.
And sometimes that could even be part of the marketing, and it's fun that you don't know what this is, like,
right. Exactly.
Judge for yourself.
Exactly.
Let your taste buds tell you.
Yeah. Like I for the longest time, like Espinosa premium cigars, they've always said they're, 11 herbs and spices that are in the mix, which they don't really say. That's become kind of a shtick for them. And it's funny, but it's also fine with me because I like that flavor profile that they bring. So while it works for Steve, his approach, it also works for Eric. And then I think there are companies where it doesn't work for them. I mean, it all depends on, I think the guys doing it, their creativity, how they handle it. But I certainly wouldn't want that to be, forced by any governing body of any sort.
Good point. Talking about cigar marketing here for a moment. On the one hand, it seems that the industry sometimes lacks a bit of the ingenuity, or probably it's just the budget to play the game of like other luxury goods that are out there. Yet more recently, there were certain sparks of creativity that have stirred confusion and even frustration, culminating in an open letter from the PCA recently, and lengthy debates about the whole topic of how marketing of cigars should probably work and look like, or what it shouldn't look like. In general, what's your perception on that topic?
Well, so I don't know if my opinion is very popular or not, but I am a free market capitalist, and I like to let the market decide. I don't think it was wise of the PCA to make that statement, because that tends to make people, there's a certain amount of people out there that they'll go against something like that because they don't like being told not to do that. It's like, don't touch that box. There's some people just are going to go and touch the box if you tell them that. So I prefer to sort of let the market decide on these things. Yeah, I know that we're in this FDA battle, but I feel like you're in the battle no matter what. Like it shouldn't matter. I mean, obviously there are boundaries here. If they were literally trying to market, something to kids, that would be wrong. And some of them do, I think, get close to that line. That's true. But I prefer to let the sort of the market decide on that. Jordan, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can see both sides. On I mostly am agreeing with you that you just let the market decide. I can see that they're saying though that, don't give them ammunition.
True.
But at the same time, what I got from the article was kind of a point that was like, hey, we don't want to be like Canada, where all the cigar boxes are brown and look the same. So let's make all our cigar boxes brown and look the same.
Right.
In advance, you have to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, you can't give up the battle just to not be in the battle.
Right.
Like there does come a point when we're going to have to fight for our rights, even if you're fighting for, say infused and flavored tobacco, right? Like some governing bodies don't seem to want to fight for that. Well, that's a big part of the premium tobacco industry. I mean, a huge portion of people get involved in premium cigars because of the acid brand. And so if we just give up that fight, we don't want to fight for that because that's kind of pushing the boundaries. That's just a huge mistake because that's a big part of our industry. So I'm opposed to kind of giving up the fight just to appease the government, because as soon as you start doing that, all right, hey, you know what? They want us to be 21 years old to buy cigars. All right, let's just, if we do that,
They'll leave us alone.
They'll leave us alone. Well, what's the very next thing? They start shooting for 25 years old. So it's like, you can't appease them with everything. If you just say, oh, that's not the hill we want to fight on. That's not the hill we want to fight on. No, that's not the hill we want to fight on. Pretty soon you're out of hills. You don't have any more hills to fight.
I very much agree with both of your statements and great points, Eric, in that, let the market decide on ultimately what's right or wrong to the people who enjoy it. But Jordan, you made a fantastic point there, to not give the FDA and other regulating institutions ammunition to come at us even harder. And the one thing that I would like to add, and I thought about this a bit earlier, is ultimately what it comes down to is that we as cigar lovers, we need to be united, and we got to speak with one voice, because we already have enough opposition out there of people who are looming threats to the enjoyment of premium cigars. And thus, I think if one good thing comes out of that PCA letter, it's at least we're having those conversations and we're thinking about where to draw a line, or which are the boundaries that we set for ourselves not to cross, in order to make sure we can continue what we love to do, and that is enjoy a great cigar.
Right. Now, that's a good point. I mean, what you're making is a good point. The thing with it is the cigar industry is like any other industry or any other segments, any other consumer segment. We will never be united. That will never, ever happen. So the PCA has to be prepared to fight for the people that are not united with them, because even though they're not united with them, it is the battle over our right to smoke tobacco. Ultimately, premium,
and our right to party.
Yeah, that too.
You got to fight for that.
You got to fight for your right. But the PCA just needs to be prepared to fight for the whole enchilada, and have to accept the fact that there are going to be folks. I can name a couple brands right now that are going to be. I won't name them, but they're in my head that want to be the counterculture, kind of bad guys of the industry, and they're always going to be those guys, and we have to be prepared to fight for all of it, because once you stop fighting for all of it, you're eventually going to lose the entire battle.
If we take that thought a step further, I mean, you've experienced dramatic changes with the Dojo app, and nobody knows what's going to happen with social media when it comes to tobacco content, premium cigars. What is your perspective on the future of social media when it comes to tobacco related products and premium cigars in particular? Are you prepared for what's to come? And do you think we all need to be more cognizant and cautious of creating our own little ecosystems where we can still openly and freely communicate?
Well, I think, Jordan, we're uniquely prepared for this because this has been our mission for the last 4 years. Once Apple started cracking down on, so a bunch of things happened all at the same time. Google started cracking down on Facebook groups that were cigar related. Did I say Google?
Yeah, at Facebook.
I meant Facebook.
Meta.
But I did, the next one I was going to say was Google, because they started cracking down on videos that were cigar related, and they took away their ability to run advertisements on those videos. So now you have Facebook, now you have Google. Then Apple cracked down. They pretty much took away almost every cigar related app, and ours was one of them. Now, we were able to stick around for a while. I know there's a couple floating around out there that are still out there, but ours was a social app. So it was, the Cigar Dojo was essentially a Twitter or Facebook or type of an app, and they didn't want that. Like, that was something they did not want. So they said no. So what we did, we said, you know what, we don't want to be beholden to Google. We don't want to be beholden to Facebook. We don't want to be beholden to Apple. And so we redeveloped the app entirely on dojoverse.com, where we're not relying up. I don't want to wake up one day like I did in Vegas a few years back and have Apple say, your app is no longer in our ecosphere anymore. I don't want that to happen. So that's why we went to the trouble of redeveloping everything from the ground up. Now it's a progressive web app. You just, you take your phone, you go to dojoverse.com, and you can just use it like that, or you can save that icon to your home screen, and then it functions exactly like an app. You'd never know it wasn't an app. And we've added a bunch of really cool, like, cigar-centric features that we couldn't add before, because there was a time for like 2 years where we were still in Apple Store, but we couldn't update our app. Couldn't add any features or change anything. Now we can do anything we want. We want to add features. We want to do this. So we've added groups. So if Facebook ever says no more cigar groups, which is possible, we're there for them. Like, we have the infrastructure, and there's a lot of groups right now that just function solely on dojoverse.com. So I feel like we're uniquely prepared for this. I don't want it to happen. It's not even though that might be good for the Dojoverse, I don't want that to happen. I prefer freedom. And I prefer that people can interact how they want to interact. If people want to interact on Facebook in a Facebook group, they should be able to do that. If people want to interact on Twitter or have an app in the App Store, that's the way it should be. But for us personally, we just want to have our own parallel sort of universe where we can't be affected by Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, and those kind of guys.
I very much agree. And even for us with the Light 'em Up Go application, it was a decision from the first moment on to make it a progressive web application as well, so that we have an independent platform where we just want to be at the service of the cigar community. And obviously, Light 'em Up Go is very different from Dojoverse, where for you it's about people and sharing their opinion, sharing pictures of what they smoke, their reviews, and for us it's more like where to buy, where to smoke, so that people can find stores and lounges. And then we have the event feature where you can find, of course, all the shows, the live shows from Cigar Dojo, and you've logged on to the app already, so you can host the shows there. But I think it's very important for the future that at least we create those pillars and we create those communities for people to continue interacting and sharing their passion for cigars through whichever means possible.
Yeah, and this is happening all over every segment, not just cigars. Like, people are realizing that, the tech has become so big, and say Facebook, for instance, such a big part of our lives, and yet they control so much of it. If if you're doing, now obviously, you know, it'd be wrong if you were doing something illegal or immoral, but if you're doing something completely legal, like cigars, smoking cigars and enjoying them, and if Facebook decided tomorrow that there was no more Facebook groups, that where there needs to be these independent places to go where we can still, yeah, it's amazing how many people on the dojo that I find they're 3 hours from the nearest lounge, right? They're 3 hours from the nearest lounge. They don't ever go to cigar lounges. For them, the dojo verse is their lounge. Like that's where they hang out. That is their little community that they have. And that's so awesome. It means so much to me that we provide that for those guys. And maybe they don't like Facebook. Maybe they do, but for them, they've chosen to have our community be part of their life. And it's awesome. Like on a Friday night, we do Friday Night Herf. Everybody gets together on the app. They're smoking, they're sharing what they're drinking, they're sharing what they're listening to. You know, it becomes a weekly event, and it really is humbling that it has become what it's become over the years. And I'm just thankful every day when I wake up that we have it.
And I think we all have to be a cigar community, and we can only applaud you and thank you for that tremendous effort, for sure. One thing that made me think a little earlier, and it almost scared me when you said that we're not united and we won't be. What do you think that we can all do better for the industry to grow and blossom? What can we all as cigar consumers and community do better?
Well, I mean, obviously the most obvious one is, you know, being educated, knowing the battle we're in. Jordan, how many times have we gone into a shop and, you know, somehow or another brought up, you know, the FDA, this or whatever. And like the guy that owns the shop, he isn't even aware. He has no idea that this is going on. And that always blows me away. It's like, how can you possibly own a cigar shop and have no idea that we're in this battle?
It doesn't seem like it happens as often now. Like that, I can't remember if it was the 21-year change. What there was some battle going on, and it seems like after that kind of woke most people up.
Right.
And I don't get that as often anymore.
But from the consumer perspective, like here's one thing that drives me crazy. Okay. I'm not an infused cigar smoker. I rarely ever smoke an acid or whatever, but I will battle to the end to protect that.
I don't agree with what you're saying,
yeah,
sir.
And so, but you get so many guys, I especially see on Facebook a lot where like we'll post a news story that'll say something like, this county in Los Angeles bans flavored and infused tobacco. And then the first 10 comments from cigar smokers are, good. Acid sucks or whatever. Right. And it's like, no, guys, come on. Like this is all of our battle. You might not like flavored tobacco, but the next thing they could be coming after is you. Maybe the government says, we don't want any cigars that are more than 60 ring gauge at some point. You don't know what the next battle is going to be. Don't just throw out just because you don't like, you know, flavored tobacco. So I guess my point on this is, you know, be educated, understand that we are in this battle, and it's very possible we could end up like Australia or even Canada, where it's very difficult to get cigars at any kind of reasonable price, and with the cool marketing and branding that comes with. Like, I don't want the United States to end up that way. And so I would say consumer education, you know, we try to do that a lot on the dojo, and I know a lot of other guys really do a good job of communicating that. We're obviously not the only ones, but that's the thing. Like, cigar smokers should educate themselves to at least to the point to understand that we are in this fight, and talk to your representatives, talk to your local and state officials, tell them your opinion. It matters. Like, these guys, they need to be reelected. And if they hear that there's a lot of people that are not happy with some of these decisions, they have to think about it. You know, they may have never even thought about it. They may just have assumed that everybody feels the way they do, that tobacco is bad. So they need to hear from consumers that, no, like, this is a thing that we love. This is part of our life. It's a choice that we make. And so we need to be educated and voice our opinion.
And of course, cigar media play a very important role in that. I mean, obviously what you guys do with your show, what some of the traditional media like Cigar Journal constantly do. And we had Matthew Tobacco logging on, Matt Ty, who is with us watching on Facebook. So all these wonderful people with their platforms, with their voices, they are such an important part of the ecosystem to communicate and make information accessible and available so that the consumer can get educated and has resources to go to. I would love to dive into the cigar media component a little more in just a second, but before that, I wanted to bring in Brian, who had a question for you for quite some while. So,
all right, hey Brian.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
This is really great. I love this concept of the Cigar Dojo. So, in my youth, my main thing that I did was martial arts years as a kid. I liked ours as kind of a philosophy. You know, the way I studied growing up was as a martial art as opposed to a sport. We did some competing, but really what we got out of it mentally and like, you know, the philosophy side of it was maybe more even than the physical side. So I think that's really cool. Let me know if you need any like metaphors, you know, that you want to pick my brain about what connects cigars and martial arts. I have a couple quick questions, if that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Eric, when you got back into cigars, was it a gateway drug? Did you start smoking cigarettes again, or you feel like it was two completely different things? Yeah,
just two totally different things. Yeah, like that I never wanted to go back to, because before, you know, as a young adult, cigarettes was just like, you know, like what you do on your break, you know, that was it. Like it was like the time waster. Like you're literally just doing something to waste time. Whereas it's the exact opposite with cigars, right? Like, yeah, I don't want to waste the time. I want to savor every moment of it. Like I hope this moment goes on for 4 hours, right? So totally different. It was not a gateway, never got back into any other forms of tobacco at all.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I had a similar experience where I feel like cigarettes are like a stressful activity. There's something manic about it, and it's the opposite vibe. You know, I was stressed out at one point in my life and I was smoking the little tiny cigars. I never did cigarettes, but I would get like the little tiny packs, and it became a different activity than what it means to like sit with a cigar and take a chunk of time for yourself. So that was a good realization.
I do think it's interesting that like the guys that have smoked cigarettes versus the guys that haven't will smoke their cigars a little differently. Like you're not afraid to like draw into your lungs a little bit, where I would never do that with a cigar.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Interesting. Oh, okay. So one more. We're talking a lot about regulation, and I think it's hilarious you brought up you know, Los Angeles, which is where I'm at. So yeah, here in California, we love our regulation. I think you can't smoke anything in the city of Santa Monica. And I mean, maybe in your home, but I don't think so. So I'm curious about Colorado. My sister lives in the suburbs over there. And at the airport, I don't know if it's still there was a smoking, not like an area like, oh, here, we'll put you in this little sealed box with, you know, you have to be seen from the outside like a zoo animal smoking. They had like a lounge. It was beautiful, and you could buy cigars. I hope it's still there. It was a great experience for me while I was waiting for my flight. But like the difference between the two states is funny to me. So Colorado confuses me in terms of, the idea to me is that do whatever you want. Like legal marijuana, yes. You want to ride a motorcycle with no helmet? Great. We're not no helmet law. Like, so to me, in terms of regulation, can you kind of explain Colorado's difference between the other states?
Colorado's just California light.
Yeah, it's definitely become that, which is, it's tragic really, because this, Colorado was like this Western frontier state, a lot of individual freedom and liberty. And they kind of had this like, cowboy sort of sensibility to the state. But over the last 20 years, that's dramatically changed. And it's odd, right? Because like, marijuana has been so relaxed here, right? Even the tax for marijuana, I think, is 40.
Oh, I thought it was like 24.
Or yeah,
versus cigars, they're like
60.
Version on 60. Yeah.
So you can't make a new cigar lounge here if you wanted to. There are a few grandfathered lounges, and when I say lounges, I'm talking about where you could like you could order a drink, that type of a thing. There's just a few left. As far as smoking outside, I think in Boulder that's pretty much illegal. I think you still can most everywhere else. I don't know. I don't do it, but yeah, like it's definitely we're going in the wrong direction, Brian.
That's really interesting. Do you know if the one is still there in the airport?
I do not believe so.
Oh.
I know, right?
Thanks.
I would have loved to have that.
We'd be there all the time.
I missed out on that, Brian. So
I think it was like a decade ago. I don't know.
Yeah. I can only think of let's see. I think
it's still there. I was just there about 4 weeks ago.
Hey, Charlie.
Where is it? I've been
on
in the
the second floor in the C Lounge or whatever. You can look it up. It's actually a restaurant where you can go. And the other two places that I know, I'm sorry, I'm butting in here, Reinhardt. The other two airports in the U.S. that I know you can smoke is Atlanta has a similar restaurant, and then there's a outdoor bar / restaurant in Miami.
Vegas has
like a little kind of enclosed area. Obviously,
yeah, Vegas. I'm just so eager to get to places where I really can smoke. Yeah. I don't bother spending any time in McLaren.
And obviously, the TGI Fridays in Miami is one that we all go to, which is not really indoors, but it seems like it when you're there. But
yeah, it's a bar with a weird tent over the top. And there's one in Atlanta as well where you can smoke cigars. I was just there.
There we go.
Just short. I'll be there again in another 3 weeks. It's important to know these things, Reinhardt.
That's right.
Very
Thanks,
much
guys.
so.
Thanks, Brian.
And Charlie, excellent comment. I mean, this is exactly why we put Light 'em Up Go there, to build a platform where these information can be consolidated for everybody to easily find it.
And Eric, you'll find me on your customer list. I buy all the cigars that you guys promote.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Charlie.
Cy Sweeney had a couple of questions for you as well, gentlemen.
Okay.
I hope you can lip read. I was saying I better go off mute. Nice to meet you, gentlemen, and greetings from across the pond in Ireland. I wanted to ask the slightly younger gentleman there about, since you are the younger face of Cigar Dojo.
I assume you're talking to me.
Yeah. Now there is a point between 25 and 40-year-olds are taking up smoking more now than before. I know that when in the 90s, 95, and that there was a lot of 25 to 40-year-olds smoking. It increased then as well. But with you being the younger face, do you think you've influenced a lot more younger through the platform, through everything you do, a lot more younger people to take up smoking, the good old cigar? And do you think that, and has anybody reached out to you, or do they reach out to you for information, or to tell you that you do that?
I would assume so. I mean, like in outside of the app, I'm just dealing with, my own friend group and stuff like that, which I try to influence as much as I can, of course. But in the app, I would assume so. With cigars, it's one of those things where I think you kind of have to take an interest to begin with, which I think a lot of young people do. And, they see this as like some regal kind of thing that more mature people do, and you naturally are like, that's cool. But usually in the past, you would have been discouraged. You go into a cigar lounge, and so often, it's just a bunch of old guys sitting around, and they kind of like turn and like look at you like, what are you? It's hard to like get into the scene. So I think absolutely our app provides a more seamless way for the young crowd to. It's not as intimidating to get into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, good answer. And just a question there on earlier on, we were saying about the secrets to the trade and all this, and blends and everything like that, and different things that go into the cigars. Like if the manufacturer did start giving out what's in this cigar, what's in that cigar, what's in cigar A, B, C, etc. Especially people like me that I love tasting, I love trying to figure out the notes in a cigar, the aromas, different things like that. Would that, in your eyes, take away the enjoyment for people smoking a cigar? Because a lot of it to do when you sit down and you want to think about a cigar and you want to enjoy it is what you get from it. So if they start telling you there's this and this in it, do you think that would take away the overall enjoyment of smoking the cigars and what you get out of it?
I think it kind of just depends on your personal preference. There, there's certain guys that I personally feel like most guys only care about what the wrapper is, like, and then maybe what country it came from. Like if you said like, oh, there's a touch of like piloto in the filler, that's not going to mean anything to them in the actual end game. They want to know what the wrapper is and what country it came from.
And I think, is this a strong cigar? Is this a full-bodied cigar? Is this a light? I think that, I would say most, but then you have, like Jordan said, it's personal preference. Randy Griggs, who hosts our Flavor Odyssey show on Wednesday nights with Robbie Raz, he's the kind of guy that he likes to know every little detail, like that is what really turns him on in the industry. Like when he gets a cigar he researches it all night long, tries to figure out every little detail. So I guess it just depends kind of on the type of person that you are.
For me personally, I like to know, like, I want to know everything about it.
Yeah, me too. And I find it interesting there that you say about, do you want to know the country it's from or this? But it's interesting that the founder of CAO Cigars, Jano Ozinger, I think his second name was, the Turkish guy. He done a test in the 90s where he produced cigars from Honduras. But what he done was he sent out loads of cigars for we'll say bang testing, where he sent them out to lots of people, different age groups. And funny enough, while people were trying to get into Nicaragua and Costa Rica and put their firms there and put more factories there, the Honduran cigars were actually the most popular, and the people didn't even know what they were. You know what I mean? So it's
right.
It's an interesting perspective. But the last question, I don't want to hog the platform here and hug you guys all night. But the last question about it is with the regulations and that. I mean, there's going to be regulations everywhere. They're all over the world, not just in the cigar industry. And I honestly think with what we smoke and what a cigar is made up of, they're trying to crack walnuts with sledgehammers. But at the end of the day, you're going to get the tax off it. You're going to get the tax off your cigar. So they might say, right, we'll do this and we'll bring in this legislation, we'll bring that legislation. But I personally don't think, and I don't know if you guys might agree with me, that they'll never put it underground because the tax gravy train is just too much on cigars, on cigarettes, which is a totally different thing. And, and whatever they want to bring out, if they legalize marijuana properly in Europe and places like that, they'll put massive tax on that as well. So it's kind of push and then shove, push and then shove. But I think they'll never come to the line where they're going to just ban smoking altogether.
Well,
what do you guys think?
I don't know. I mean,
that's just my humble opinion, by the way.
I could see a point where they're kind of going with which way the tide is moving, and if they get enough people not smoking cigarettes and the tax is too high and they're not bringing enough money in from it to begin with, they would have no problem just banning cigarettes.
I think that, you said a second ago that there's push here and there's push back, and that's true, but that just shows why you have to keep pushing. Because if you don't keep pushing, they just keep pushing the other direction. And you said, oh, they need the revenue. Well, let's keep in mind that, premium tobacco represents this minuscule little fragment of the industry.
It is
and
so minuscule, and people don't understand that,
It's so tiny that they might even like in Colorado, they could care less about premium tobacco and cigars. They would be fine if it was gone entirely. And I feel like California is sort of the same way. Brian could attest to that. So I'm not 100% sure that they wouldn't just get rid of it altogether if we didn't keep pushing back.
Yeah, but it's a bit like the example here. Like, I'm Cigar Rights and World Ambassador for Ireland, and I every week without fail, I have a few memos into government. It's simple as that. I just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. I want to be a pain in the ass. And
good.
Sorry for my French. And I try to encourage other people to help me with it. But we were the first country to bring in non-smoking in indoor areas. But I'll tell you for a fact that was done not because Ireland makes great revenue out of cigarettes, right? Premium again here. Cuban cigars are the big thing, you know what I mean, to be honest. And it's fantastic now that we have the options of non-Cubans, which I smoke everything anyway. But the government bought it in for the simple reason was it looked good to the rest of the world. It looked good to Europe, because the very minute the backs were turned, people were smoking, are still smoking all over the place. They'll lock in the pub and they'll still smoke in certain pubs, cigarettes, cigars, etc. So I don't honestly think it'll ever. I think we'll push and we'll push. They'll push and they'll push, but I think it'll never ever go underground. Never.
Well,
that's only my humble opinion.
It's very, very easy to lose a right, but it's almost impossible to get that right back. So
exactly.
Excellent point.
And thank you guys for your time. I appreciate the honest answers there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Si, many thanks for your question, and let's jump right over to Ian, who had a follow-up on that as well.
Hi guys, really enjoying the conversation, and just following on the last point, I'm like you, I don't mind if the cigar manufacturer wants to keep his blend secret or wants to let me know, because even if he told me what's in there, it's not necessarily going to affect my view of the cigar. I can tell from the first few puffs whether I'm going to like it, and whether it's got a particular leaf in there or not, I don't really care, and I don't have a sophisticated enough palate to sort of realize what's there. I think one of the guests here, he gave a cigar to Dion Giolito, and he guessed the blend, and he said, no, it's not quite right. And he admitted actually afterwards that Giolito had got everything right. He knew all 5 leaves in that cigar, but I'll never be at that sort of stage. I just actually want to ask you, Eric, you're smoking the Sobremesa, I believe, and I had a box of those. Is that still sweet? Because mine were very sweet to start with, then it stopped being so sweet. Have you noticed that?
I got to tell you, I've smoked a lot of this particular cigar, and I've smoked some that there is no doubt in my mind that there was some sort of sweet flavor on not just the tobacco. Like, I know Steve says, oh, you're not used to tasting properly aged Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper. Well, okay, but I've had some of these that I was just sure beyond any doubt that there was something sweet on the tip there. And then I've had other ones like this one I'm having right now. It just tastes like a really nice well done. I don't taste that saccharine sweetness on it, so I don't really know the answer. I know he came out with the sampler, that STFU, that had intentionally sweetened caps on some and then double sweetened caps on some other ones, just to prove the point. But that still doesn't. I don't know, Jordan. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Like, are you asking me if they're sweetened or not?
I mean, yeah. Do you think Steve's telling the truth? Or
I think there's something going on, and maybe a batch. The first run just accidentally they rolled them with the sweet gum, because there's definitely an inconsistency. Like, just the fact that some of them are so incredibly noticeable. The second it touches your lips, you're like, oh, that's a sweetened cigar. And then some of them that doesn't happen. I can't imagine that just being, oh, that's just premium tobacco, and you've never tasted premium Connecticut like that before. I think
I mean,
something going on.
I had a box of them, and the first few were definitely very sweet. Just put your lips to it; it was sweet.
Right.
But then after about 6 months to a year, I spent them over about 18 months or so, and the sweetness just disappeared altogether. It was still a nice cigar, but it didn't have that initial sugary taste, which was interesting. I mean, I liked it, but it wasn't what I was smoking the cigar for. And I think it's to do with the aging. I think it just disappears with age. That's my view.
Which would go counterintuitive to Steve's explanation. If you were right, Ian, and I'm not saying you're not, because you could be. In fact, I kind of think you might be right. But that would go counter to what Steve's explanation is that the aging of the tobacco brings out that sweetness. Here's the thing though, Ian. When I first had this cigar, I was a little off put by that sweetness. Because I didn't, in my mind, I wasn't expecting that. And so I was off put. And then like a couple days went by and I was like, I want to smoke another one of those. And then I got so hooked on that cigar. Like I didn't care whether it was sweetened or not. Like I just love this cigar. And so to me, it doesn't really matter. It's just a funny story.
No, yeah. And obviously he's got us all talking about it. And maybe, who knows, maybe he sweetened the first batch to get us all talking about it and then took it away for everything. Now that we like the cigar, they just remove that.
Thank you.
And I think that's the very best point. At least Steve managed to get one thing right, and that is everybody's talking about it.
Right.
And the media coverage he got with that, and with this sampler of the STFU, at least everybody was talking about it, right?
Right.
Media and talking about cigars. Macy Henson had a question, I believe, that will lead us right back to the cigar media component. Macy, welcome.
First time on camera. You're losing my virginity right now. Hello. Shout outs to Brian, Ian. I made some friends off Ian. I'm buying all the cigars you're telling me, including the Mombacho, getting great recommendations. First of all, I couldn't agree more. I want to know everything about a cigar. I want to know I want to see the farms they come from. I want to know how long they've been aged. I want to know the fermenting process. And I would suspect actually a lot of people that are on the internet or that are on podcasts like this every week in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon, at least where I am in Mississippi, we're obsessed. So I think that there actually are more crazy asses like us. There are 8 billion people in the world, so there are enough of my dream is to start a cigar brand that actually goes to that level of detail. And anyway, I'm not going to give away my secrets here, but
see, there you go. You're already not giving away your secrets.
That's right. First of all, I've been smoking cigars since I was 15. I'll admit, I think some flavor. There was like a Kelp cognac cigar that I love, but it was actually the early Gloria Cubanas, Ernesto Carrillos that I liked the adult stuff. What appealed to me when I was 15 was feeling like an adult. So it's so subjective as to what, anyway. But I'm a libertarian, I sense you are, and we lose on everything. So maybe that's right. But my question is really about cigar media. And I think Cigar Aficionado has declined in quality significantly since I was a kid. I still subscribe. I don't even know why anymore at this point. I guess the ads are pretty. But their features are few, far, and in between. I think the last feature I read in a print magazine was on the breaking news that Nicaragua is a cigar powerhouse. And I'm like, thank you. And apparently they have cigar factories in Nicaragua. So that was some really groundbreaking journalism. There's a company called Olla de Nicaragua as well. I was just so what I don't get is, and I see you don't do it. And if anyone, I would say Cigar Journal does the best job. And if they're out there listening, kudos to them. And I'm pitching my services to you. I would like to be this features writer. I'm a practicing lawyer. Someone's got to do it. Why are there not more features out there? Why is there not more magazine style journalism? Why is there not more just real like articles in the cigar? I'm not talking about press release, and I love the reviews. I would never want to do it myself, but I guess I do not see the type of feature, like why is there not 60 minutes type stuff in the cigar business when there are so many interesting stuff. I've learned more interesting stories from this podcast and other podcasts out there than I have in like the last 20 years. I think it was, it might've been on this show, Eric Espinoza was talking about how he had to give a loan to John Drew and Drew Estate when he was working as their own sales rep so they could pay an invoice to keep the company afloat. There are these inside baseball stories that are amazing. I heard George Brightman talk about selling cigars to Charlie Sheen the day before his meltdown at the Plaza Hotel. I mean, there's just so many stories, and I see Half Wheel has them, but Half Wheel, Ian, does not. They scratch the surface. I guess. Why do you not think, is folks in the media, is it just no one's crazy enough to do it, or it doesn't pay, or there's just other interests? Why do you think there are not more? And if anyone's out there, I'm a practicing lawyer. I'd love to do it for free and give away my content. And I just like access to, because I just want to learn these stories myself. They are so incredible. And I know there's so many more out there.
Well, maybe
we'll shut up now.
Maybe we'll take you up on your offer, especially the free part. Actually, for us, it's really a time thing. We love doing the feature. We have a column on cigardojo.com. There's a menu item that says feature articles, and those are articles that are not reviews, and they're not news, and they're these more featured articles, but they're really time consuming and they're very difficult. We've struggled, Jordan. We've wanted to do a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things going on there. Yes, if we had the manpower, we'd be doing more stuff like that. Also, just the way that our culture is right now, people are more into just quick, just listicle, just, top 10 this, top 10 that, in one and done. And then at the same time, I am also interested in what you're saying, but more from like a podcast perspective. Like we always talk about, like, these guys tell these amazing stories on our show, but it's just, the brief overview. Like we would love to someday be able to do like more like a Radio Lab style podcast where you get like, it's edited together and you get like the opinion. The guy says, oh, this one guy did this. And then we actually go interview that guy. And then he tells his part of the story and you edit that all together. I would love to see that kind of thing. I think it just takes a lot of work.
Right. It'd be difficult, but like we've had some, like Rafael Nadal was on our show, and the story he told should be a feature like you're talking about, Macy, because it was an amazing story about how when he first got to the US, he got an apple and a Coke. They gave him an apple and a Coca-Cola. And to this day, anytime he has an apple or a Coca-Cola, he practically breaks down in tears because it means so much to him that it was like essentially the taste of freedom. And so like stuff like that, I would love to see more of that. And if we had
everyone
3 more guys,
would like to read that.
If we had 3 more guys working for us, we'd do that. Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
And the problem with podcast, I love podcasts. The issue is you can't always listen to them. And sometimes you want, maybe a podcast interview with the written transcript. But some of this stuff, I think written content with photos and maybe an interview component in it. Anyway, I think, thank you.
Well, you're on to something, Macy. Keep getting fired up about that. We'll figure it out.
Gentlemen, let me follow up on that. When you look at the Cigar Dojo blog in particular and that written media component in more detail, where do you think are the golden nuggets of content that truly move the needle and spark people's interest? Do you primarily see like the most interaction and the most clicks on the top list or the review side? Like, are people genuinely interested in those feature articles, or is it ultimately all down to, XYZ cigar got a 92, whereas the other one is just an 89?
Well, for us, it's definitely the year-end list is the biggie. I mean, we get almost as much traffic on that as we get from everything else combined all year long. It's massive. And then after that, our feature articles, even like the listicle type stuff that Jordan's talking about, do really well. And then from there, reviews. And then after that, it's news and press releases, which get the least amount of views. So where are we headed? I think Jordan nailed it. probably the it seems like in today's world, people like that sort of BuzzFeed style, quickie, easy to ingest, listicle type stuff. Even our featured articles that we've done in the past are usually, most of them are on the kind of the silly side, trying to maybe bring some entertainment value, a little bit lighter kind of stuff. But I would say, you notice even now, like look at Cigar Aficionado, on their online presence, they do a lot of really light stuff, really listicle kind of, 4 things you shouldn't do, when wearing leather shoes or whatever it is, right? So like a big company like them, they're even heading in that direction.
Now, that my next question might sound a little philosophical, but I think it's also a great analogy to the manufacturing side of cigars as well. Taking everything into consideration, what you have just mentioned, do you think that cigar media should be more proactive in communicating what you think is right and needs to be heard? Or do you feel more like it's a reactive work where you just try to give the consumer what they're already asking for? And the reason I said I think it's an analogy to the manufacturing component, we sometimes talk with the manufacturers as to whether they're just putting out cigars that they like and enjoy, and then hopefully it'll stick with somebody. Whereas others would probably argue, well, we will just produce whatever people want to smoke, right? Do you know where I'm coming from?
Right, absolutely. And Jordan, you have a good take on this. Like, Jordan always says it's a balance. Like you always talk about how I want to give information to our readers about what they're looking for, but B, I also want to be the subject matter expert to actually give good advice.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, a lot of the stuff I'm writing about is stuff that I'm genuinely curious about as a consumer, and then I just have to figure out what the answer is, and that is, if it's interesting to me, I would assume it would be interesting to the reader as well. But then there, it's a balance, like you're saying, that on the other side, you also have to just provide a continuous stream of what the people want to read.
Yeah, it's like reviews, right? Like with reviews, you can't spend too much time reviewing cigars that nobody's interested in, because there has to be some reason to review that cigar. Either A, there's a lot of interest in it, people want to hear about it, or B, it's something that we've discovered that we want to share with everybody. So like there are times when we review unknown cigars, but that's only because we've found that we want to share that information. Like, wow, this cigar, this is going to blow you guys away. This is a diamond in the rough. Wait till you hear about this thing. But if you spent your whole, time and effort on, a little unknown brands, you probably would get no traffic, and you got to get traffic if you want to, make your advertisers happy, because that's the whole point of
still a business.
It's still a business, and we got to stay in business. That's our number one goal, is stay in business. So it's a balance.
Yeah, if we had the team to do it, we'd review every cigar in the market, but we can only review so many. And so, we try to do the blockbusters, more of the blockbusters, and then hit on some of the ones that we're interested in as well.
Yeah. Today we published the review of the new Warped Companion that Jordan did that review. So that's a new cigar that people probably want to find out, what we thought of it. So it doesn't have a ton of buzz or whatever yet, but it's something that, we know that Warped brand has some buzz, and so people probably want to know what that cigar is all about. So you just gotta, what we do is, Jordan's the main review editor. He gets all of the cigars in, and we kind of determine, is this one that we feel we should devote, the time to do the full review on? Between writing the review and doing the photography and editing the photography and editing the review, a lot of time goes into these reviews. This isn't something that we just whip out in an afternoon. I mean, these take days, sometimes weeks, if you talk about the actual review process itself. So you really got to be picky about the ones you choose.
I hear you. And I mean, this is probably where, as a media professional, you get on thin ice. You mentioned that it has to be a stable business. You need to make sure to still be relevant to the companies that would advertise with you. And on the other hand, Eric, I believe you said a wonderful term on Meet the Professor, where you spoke about objectively positive ways of voicing your opinion about a cigar review. How do you balance that sometime where you feel you have your responsibility towards the end consumer on the one hand, but then also the responsibility towards your advertising partners on the other hand?
Right. That's such a great question. Here's the thing. Every blogger that gets into the business, this is what they say when they're getting into the business. They say, you know what? I'm just going to say it like it is, Jordan. I'm just going to, if this cigar sucks, I'm going to blast it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But then as you go on, you realize that you have to just be, you can't just be the jerky guy that comes on and spanks every cigar. And every blogger that lasts more than a year or two, they eventually realize this, that you have to start explaining the bad parts of the cigars in a way that isn't insulting, because so much time, effort, money go into making these cigars. It's just way too easy to sit there on the sideline and throw rocks, right? So we don't ever want to be the guys that just sit on the sideline and throw rocks. We want to be, because I know, and I know, Jordan, you know, just because you don't like something doesn't mean somebody else does.
Exactly. Yeah. You gotta find, there's ways to say, to express what you're through maybe just the score. Let the score itself speak. Let the score speak for itself, and then at the same time find in the written part ways to say, oh well, who would enjoy this cigar? In what circumstances could this possibly be enjoyed? Even if I just hate it. You don't have to bash it through your words. You can let the score speak for itself. There's other ways to, and maybe this style doesn't suit my palate, but it would suit your palate, that kind of thing.
And I think that readers of all cigar media, like they find Cigar Journal and they realize, you know what, my palate just matches the Cigar Journal guys. Like the way they review cigars, they almost always agree with me. And so then they'll gravitate towards Cigar Journal. And then you got Coop and Half Wheel, and you got all these other awesome media brands, and people will eventually figure out, hey, you know what, the Cigar Dojo guys, they tend to like the cigars and rate cigars highly that I like. And so then, they may trust our reviews, and ultimately we want to build trust. So like at the end of the year, when we come out with our list, I don't want people to think ever, oh wow, Cigar Dojo, they just did that because of advertising. They actually, I think I could trust that list. I think I could take that list to the brick and mortar, and I could buy those cigars, and I'm probably going to enjoy them. I might not agree 100%, but those Cigar Dojo guys, they kind of are in my wheelhouse. And I think everybody kind of finds, their media outlet that they sort of agree with and trust. And I know that, some media outlets, some bigger ones, people don't trust their opinions for, they think, oh, it's just advertising or whatever. And I don't know if that's true or not. I would never, say that about them. Maybe that's just what they like. But ultimately, I hope my goal is that people trust our opinion.
And I also think it's probably that you gotta find people where you feel like you're in tune with their palate and the subjectivity of the opinion that they voice, because everybody's opinion is subjective. And with reviews, obviously there is an objective component where you can talk about the technical performance of the cigar and maybe the complexity that it delivers, and whether that is a good thing or a negative component. But when it comes to the descriptives of aroma and flavor and like the sensory evaluation, that will always remain more of a subjective element of the whole thing. And then it's probably a means of you agreeing more with Coop's palette rather than the aficionado panel or what have you, right?
Right. And not only that, but think about this, like within that subjectivity, then it's also a handmade product. So you could be smoking one that wasn't kept as well, from the retailer that you bought it. I mean, there's all those other aspects that go into it. When you buy a TV, right? You buy a TV, an electronic, it pretty much, for the most part, it is what it is. And so there are some really, really objective ways that you could decide how good a television set is, right? It's a lot harder to do that with a cigar because of the fact it's a handmade product, and the products vary from box to box a little bit, maybe some more with some manufacturers than others. You have Perdomo, right, that has just intense quality control. Their products are a little bit more stable, if that's a good word to use. But for the most part, you can't totally be sure of that either. Now, we have a bit of an advantage with the dojoverse.com because we have tens of thousands of people that are rating cigars on our app every single day. And so we do get a nice feel for how that objectivity of the product goes. If we start to see guys all over the country saying the same thing about this cigar, oh, the wrapper cracked as soon as I lit it up, right? Like we do have a built-in advantage. We are able to see a lot of that stuff that maybe, some of these other guys can't see because they don't have this massive, community of people that are reviewing cigars every minute on the dojo. That does help us.
Eric, that is a wonderful point. Do you factor some of that into your considerations for the top list of the year? Or do you think it would be worthwhile to create more of a platform where the community has a voice and where that consolidated information from the end consumer has more impetus and more weight?
I think that there is definitely some of that is factored in, because by the time we narrow it down to the 20 or 30 cigars that might be we just do top 10. That's it. Just top 10. So if you make our top 10 list, that's going to be a pretty good cigar. It's very difficult to get in that top 10, but the cigars that are around, 14, 15, 16, and we're wondering, should this be considered or not? That's when we start thinking about, the community rating and seeing what other people thought. And we add that into our calculation as to what might have a chance to make that final top 10. I don't think that does when we're talking about like our top 5. Usually that's sort of like our internal panel is pretty well set on what we think on that. But those fringe cigars, yeah, we definitely take that into consideration for sure.
Let's talk a bit about the evolution of cigar media. A while ago, there was this whole discussion about print media being challenged by the online coming in. And then, of course, now even the online media landscape is changing dramatically on a daily basis with everything that's going on. I had an interesting conversation recently with Boston Jimmy, and he said when he was at TPE earlier this year, he felt like there were all these TikTokers coming in and doing their thing, which was way different from how traditional media folks would behave. And I think Jose Blanco on the Meet the Professor show said that, some of these more traditional cigar media are slowly fading because there's less and less of them, because as you rightfully mentioned, it takes a lot of hard work, it takes a lot of effort to put that stuff up. Do you think that the online cigar media landscape will drastically change, and with that change the industry?
Yeah, I think it will change. Now, but it'll still ultimately be what the consumer wants, right? Like the market will speak. And I think that if you put out a really good product in the print world, if you put out a really good product and you're a blogger, if you put out a really good product and you're a podcaster, if you put out really good stuff and you're a influencer, then you'll be able to have longevity. You'll rise to the top, and you'll have staying power. So it really ultimately, no matter what it is, you know, it comes down to the quality of the product that you put out, just like with cigars, right? Like the manufacturers that make the best products are the ones that stick around the longest. And so I think it'll always be that, but will it change? Yeah, of course it's going to change because social media and the YouTubers, there'll be more of that. People tend to have less time to dedicate to this, so they like smaller ingestible sort of bits of information. So yeah, I think it will change, but the one thing that won't change is the quality will be the one that the quality ones will stick around and the ones that aren't quality won't.
Jordan, do you think that because cigars, by the sheer nature of the product being a traditional handmade product in a rather old-fashioned industry, that the cigar world is more reluctant to that sort of change and iterations or disruption that are coming in from the digital world now?
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like the cigar world's always been slow to change in every aspect, but it does also. I think it's adapting quicker these days. Maybe in 2010-ish, we saw the cigar industry start to mimic the beer world, and once that kind of took hold, I think things really started to change a lot quicker. It's a cooler product now, and yeah, I think that that guys are more willing to reach out to the younger smoker and blend newer styles that they would be into.
You know, it wasn't that long ago. We were at a post-event party, right? And we're having a great time. And our good buddy Jack Heyer, who's with Drew Estate now, he brought over this guy to me, and he's like, "Eric, this guy wants to argue with you." And I was like, he wants to argue with me? I'm like, all right, okay, whatever. And so he brought this guy over, and this guy was saying, by the way, this guy's a really neat guy and super nice guy. So I'm not putting him down.
Never say a bad word.
He'd never say a bad word. But he was like, Eric, he's like, you like Davidoff so much. He's like, Davidoff's not even going to be around in 10 years. And I was like, what are you talking about? Why would Davidoff not be around in 10 years? I was like, they're one of the top 3 brands in the entire world. He's like, I know. He's like, but everybody who smokes Davidoff is 70 years old. In 10 years, they're all going to be dead and nobody's going to like them. And I said, dude, I'm telling you right now, Davidoff makes a great product, and the new smokers coming up, they're going, because they make a great product, those new smokers that are coming up, they're going to buy Davidoff products. As long as Davidoff continues to make quality products, Davidoff's going to be one of the top 3 brands in the world. Now, that was about 5 years ago, Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
So we've only
they're almost dead now.
We've only got 5 years left in this argument. So like, this gets back to my point in that as long as you make a quality product, that sifts its way out into the market and you will have staying power, is assuming you keep your quality up.
But Davidoff has also adapted. You know, they came out
Yeah.
with the Black Label series to kind of capture more exotic flavor profiles, that sort of thing.
Yeah, of course, that's part of it, right? Yeah.
Now, as much as I love this conversation, and what a pleasure it is to have you guys on, before we come to the end of the show, just taking everything that you said as a segue to our final go around, because we all need to adapt, because we all need to change, what are some of the changes that you would love to see in the industry? And then secondly, what's installed for Cigar Dojo, Dojoverse, and both your personal journeys with cigars?
I think the thing in the industry that I like to see the most, and Jordan, you comment on this too, is I like to see tobacco innovation. I like to see the hybrids. I like to see the different, aging techniques. I like to see the different. I like to see when companies give me a cool narrative about a cigar, that has to do with the tobacco. This is a wrapper that we've never grown in this region, and then we were able to finally pull it off. I like that kind of stuff. I want to see more of that. I think one thing I get tired of is like, here's our new San Andreas wrapped cigar, and it's just, it might be a fine cigar, but for me to pique my interest, I like a bit of innovation.
Yeah, I like what CAO has been doing with the Arcana series. They've been yeah, trying to like this new one of the Firewalker. They're showing off the style that I hadn't even heard of, where they bury the pilon in the Nicaraguan soil for a few months and then bring that up and then age it in a regular pilon. Like that's the kind of stuff that's cool to me.
I love, Perdomo double aging all their tobaccos in the old bourbon barrels, and that, not to give it the bourbony flavor, but just to break down the tobacco just a little bit more and give it that little bit more of a buttery note to it. Like, I like that kind of stuff. I like the extra effort into the tobacco. And so I like to see more of that. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
The more personal side of the evolution for both of you and Cigar Dojo and Dojoverse on the larger scale.
Yeah, I mean, we're continuing to add cool features to the Dojoverse. We'll have another sort of big upgrade this year. Jonathan Drew told me one time, I think this was in New Orleans at PCA. Well, it was IPCPR at the time, and he loved the dojo, right? I mean, we did the Dogma together, and so he's always been a big supporter and a big fan of the dojo. And he sort of pulled me aside and he was like, Eric, he's like, here's the one key. He's like, you got to keep changing, keep changing, keep evolving. Don't stay the same way. So I've always taken that advice to heart, in that everything we do, I mean, I don't want to be, crazy change, but I want to add something new every year. A couple years ago, we added the Flavor Odyssey podcast on Wednesday night, which we'll do tonight. That was sort of new. Obviously, the Dojoverse was big. We did cigarwars.net. So I always want to be exploring something new. We do these, we do our collaboration projects, and this is our 10-year anniversary. So we're going to have several collaboration projects this year. I always want to be bringing something fresh and new to the table. When we got into cigars, Jordan, it was forums, right? It was cigar forums. There was no cigar apps at all. Like, we were the first app, and those forums just seemed so stale. It was like they had been doing the same thing, using like V-Bulletin software or whatever for like 10 years. And it had gotten, they probably had gotten a nice big following, and then they just stayed the same and just slowly started to die on the vine. And so I never wanted to be that guy dying on the vine. I always wanted to be, like throwing up a new apple and a new banana and a new orange every year to keep that tree of interest going.
Excellent. And we wish you all the very best from heart for those tremendous changes, and kudos to you for everything that you have built with Cigar Dojo and Dojoverse. It's such an important part of this wonderful ecosystem that thankfully we can all be a part of. And I want to thank you from heart for being our guest of honor tonight. Such a tremendous pleasure to welcome you guys at the Light 'em Up Lounge. Thanks for everything that you shared, and all the very best for an incredible year ahead, the 10-year anniversary for Cigar Dojo. And keep rocking. You're doing a tremendous job.
I appreciate that. Thank you
Thanks
for having us on the
guys.
show. Thanks to Ian and Macy and Charlie and Brian for the questions. Really appreciate that. And we'll have to get you on our show some night. We'll on a Friday night. We'll have you on Smoke Night Live. How about that?
It will be a tremendous pleasure and honor for me anytime.
Awesome. We'll set that up for sure. Hey, thank you so much for having us on.
My pleasure. Eric, Jordan from Cigar Dojo, many thanks for joining us at Light 'em Up. You guys take care, and we'll see you all again next week. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. Light 'em up.
Great show. Thank you.
Great show.